Hello and welcome to Solid Seminars. Today we'll be talking about the bullet penetration mechanics. So, let's get started, shall we? So in Metal Gear Online 2, you have terrain which is essentially the map itself. So, if you see a bit of cover, such as a wall, and you try and shoot through it, the bullet's going to get as far as the wall and stop there. This is not a universal rule, however. There are certain types of terrain which you can fire through, and it is weapon dependent. So for example, this tranquilizer won't go through this here unless we switch to a high power weapon, and then it will. Now there are limits on how much terrain you can pierce with a single bullet. This caps both the amount of objects you can pierce as well as the damage it will deal. Whereas normally a bullet will do lethal damage on a headshot, the same rule does not apply if it has to pierce any terrain. So if you go for a headshot now, in terms of scoring, if you do lethal damage on the head despite going through terrain, it'll still class as a headshot. Now this isn't limited to just terrain. The upper and lower limbs, as well as the torso, all count as separate objects that need to be pierced. So if you pierce any of these prior to hitting the head, it will also become a non-lethal headshot. Now the damage reduction is 10% per object you pierce, and there's also a hard cap on how many objects you can pierce, and it's on a weapon by weapon basis. So to give an example, this reinforced box, trying to break through it using an M4 custom isn't going to work, but if we switch to an SVD, which is a higher penetration weapon, you'll be able to shoot through it. The examples shown were just for wooden materials. There are also different types of materials with different effects. I'll list them here, and to go through them one by one, we'll start with weakest to strongest. So first you have your glass and your metal mesh. So with these, when you aim at someone, it will bring their name tag up, is a unique factor of that one. It's also not blocked by any bullets and will do full damage regardless of whether you have to break through them or not. And when we're talking about metal fencing, it's not limited to literal fences, it can also include floors, such as this here. If you hover through it, you should be able to see someone who you can target, and it will do full damage on them. Now tarpaulin sheets and bushes, they don't count as an object towards the object limit, however they do incur the 10% damage penalty. So we can still see a name tag appear if we aim through them, but if we deal damage, we're doing 10% less than we normally would. Now you may be wondering how this particular barrier made of wood could be pierced by an M4, but the same M4 couldn't pierce this wooden box. That's because not all wooden objects are created equal. You can find on the game boxes which are literally just textured cubes, and they will count as a single wooden object, whereas more complex geometry like this are actually made up of multiple different wooden objects all stitched together. So to pierce this particular item, you've had to go through 2 layers of wooden objects, so it will count as 2 wooden objects. And you'll find rather deceptively tough items such as this wooden crate. So to go through it in depth, you are piercing this wooden wall here, but then you also have a wooden plane here which goes right the length of this crate. So that's your second wooden object you're piercing. You have the same again going diagonally. That's a third wooden object, and once more a fourth wooden object. Mercifully, there is no back collision on this outer one, so you're just going through 4 objects, not 5. But that's the reason why the M4 Custom can't break through this unless you're going at a very specific angle where you're missing most of those objects. And with this box in particular, there's also an extra pane going down the middle, and that's right the length. So even if you're using a more powerful piercing weapon such as the SVD, try to aim either down this block or down this block, because if you go diagonally, you'll catch an extra object, and that means you won't pierce anymore. Unfortunately, the rules are not universal. It's a map by map and sometimes even object by object basis, in that they seem to have forgotten to properly flag materials for certain objects, and as a result they don't behave the way you'd expect them to. You can bring up the weapon menu, and if you press square, it's the PNT stat on the right there. Unfortunately, these are not accurate. The devs may have changed them over time, so to give a more complete view of what you can use, I've divided them into my own categories, which we'll go through now. F-rank weapons can only pierce one tarpaulin or wooden object, so we'll be fine getting through this tarpaulin sheet. But once we add a second tarpaulin sheet into the mix, it stops working. E- ammo is anesthetic ammo, so this can get through an extra sheet of tarpaulin. So there it can't get through 4 sheets, but when we just do 2 sheets. Anesthetic ammo also still does full damage after piercing objects. E-rank weapons are a slight improvement. They can go through a fair bit more tarpaulin, but again, you're not going to get very far when it comes to cardboard. Book ammo can technically pierce more than one, however, because it's 6 pieces of ammo and they're all tied together, if they happen to cover multiple objects, it will devour the entire shrapnel burst, causing it all to miss. So with this, you're only going to reliably get through 1 piece of wood at a time. C ranks is where you no longer have to worry about cardboard or tarpaulin. You'll still suffer the damage penalty, however, you'll be able to get through as many pieces as you like without having to worry about the bullet stopping. B ranks are a slight step up. They have 1 extra wooden object you can pierce, which can make all the difference in certain maps. A rank is just the SVD. This is the strongest non-drabbing point weapon you can use, and is well suited for breaking through these strong boxes that count as multiple wood objects. Star weapons are special in that, despite being subject to the limit of how many objects it can pierce, piercing objects does not impose a damage penalty, so you'll always do full damage. Slug ammo suffers the damage penalties, however it can pierce a great many objects, and if you land a headshot, it doesn't matter how many objects you pierce, it'll still be lethal. S-star rank are the best of the best. They suffer no damage penalty, so as long as you can hit your mark, you'll do full damage. It's worth noting that meleeing and Ocelot's weapons can pierce walls and ceilings, so be very careful when hiding underground. That's all for weapon rankings. Now let's step through each map and figure out how we can apply these to different areas.